On tonight's Monday Night Travel, we're joined by Nikki Solano, a Costa Rica guidebook author, for a dive into this rugged Central American country. From its capital, San Jose, we'll visit spots both well-known and off the beaten path, including remote Drake Bay and breathtaking waterfalls in the La Fortuna rainforest. Thanks for joining us.
Good evening and welcome to Monday Night Travel with Rick Steves Europe. My name is Julianne Worden and I will be your host this evening as we travel outside of Europe to visit Costa Rica with our special guest, Nikki Solano. And now, without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce our guest this evening, Nikki Solano. Hi, Nikki.
Hey, Julianne.
Nikki, thank you so much for joining us tonight. And Nikki is a Moon Guidebook author. Moon Guidebooks are published through the same publisher as Rick Steves' books, and so we have a little connection with them. And Nikki, where are you based in Costa Rica?
Yeah, so my husband and I are based in two areas. When we're working, we're usually in La Fortuna, which is a very touristy town. We're going to cover that place today. And then when we're vacationing, if we're not on the road enjoying one of the amazing destinations around the country, we're usually at our home just outside of a small town called Turrialba, up in the mountains close to the Pequari River.
And what drew you to Costa Rica originally?
Oh, good question. I was working kind of an intense job, which I really loved at the time, but I just kind of needed a vacation. And I remember walking into a travel agent's office and asking for a book. And I flipped through it and I saw a photo of a whitewater rafting tour. And I thought, I want to do that. So it ended up being Costa Rica and Panama. So I took a backpacking trip through Central America, did the whitewater rafting tour, and actually met my husband, who was the rafting tour guide.
Wow, that sounds like a dream come true.
It was a serendipitous happening for sure.
Yeah. And do you have some of the guidebooks with you? How long have you been writing with Moon?
I do. So I started writing for Moon in 2018. The first book came out in 2019. So that was the first edition. We're currently on the second edition. It looks like this. It was written about a year and a half ago. So this is the most current edition that you can buy in stores, if you wanted to pick it up, say tomorrow. If you're not traveling for a while, I've written a third edition, which comes out in September, and it looks like this.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, and I should also mention we have another different book, which is called Moon Best of Costa Rica. So this is a bit different in that it covers a lot of the top destinations and the top experiences, whereas the regular Moon Guide is a full country guidebook and covers a lot of the off the beaten path destinations and activities.
Great. Well, I am so excited to learn more about Costa Rica this evening. And it's all Nikki tonight. She has an awesome presentation with beautiful pictures and videos. So, Nikki, I will hand it over to you.
Okay. So I'm just going to pull up our first slideshow here. Okay, so hopefully you can see a picture of a town at the base of the volcano. Just confirming, Julianne, can you see that okay?
Yes, perfect.
Okay. All right. Okay, so the first region that we're going to focus on today is the northern inlands. So there's actually two anchors to the northern inlands. One is the town of La Fortuna, and the other is the town of Monteverde. Now, we're going to get to Monteverde in a minute, but I want to start with La Fortuna. And I'm a bit biased because La Fortuna is my favorite place in all of Costa Rica. It's where I lived when I first moved to the country, and it is also where I started my business. So it definitely has a special place in my heart, but it also is a very popular destination because it has so much to do and so much to see. So we're going to get into that now. This photo that you're looking at on the screen shows downtown La Fortuna. So this is a very small, concentrated town, very easy to walk around. There you'll find a lot of restaurants, some hotels, lots of tourism offices, lots of souvenir stores. And you'll see that it is right at the base of the stunning Arenal volcano. So this is the eastern side of the volcano that you're looking at. But if I just switch to the opposite side, so now we're looking at the west side of the volcano, and this is where you will find the magnificent rainforest. So a lot of people, one of the reasons why they want to come to Costa Rica in the first place is to see the rainforest. And if that is you, you should definitely come to La Fortuna. So over here on this western side of the volcano, you will find a ton of flora and fauna. Here pictured is a giant ceiba tree that you can see in the Arenal Volcano National Park, and also one of the beautiful blue morpho butterflies that you can see. Well, you can see them all over Costa Rica, but you can also see them in La Fortuna. So in this region, you will find the national park. You'll also find a lot of private reserves. Now, I just want to jump to relaxation for a minute, and then we'll come back to adventure. So one of the awesome things about La Fortuna, because it sits at the base of an active volcano, is that you have access to a ton of hot springs. Now, hot springs, if you aren't familiar, are essentially just man-made pools in most cases, where natural thermal water from the volcano travels down the volcano, gets pumped up into these pools, and then you can sit and soak in them and rejuvenate your body. They are wildly relaxing. They are hard to leave, but they really make for a very relaxing evening after a long day of participating in adventure activities. So La Fortuna is a really great place to experience the hot springs. I would say that it has the best hot springs across the country, although you can find hot springs in other areas. I've picked 4 of my favorite hot springs and pictured them here. So starting in the top left corner are the hot springs called Eco Termales. In the top right corner are the Springs Resort Hot Springs. In the bottom right corner are the Tabacon Hot Springs. And in the bottom left corner, we have the Baldi Hot Springs. So truthfully, all of the hot spring options in La Fortuna Arenal are very diverse. So they vary according to multiple factors. Some are very large, some are very small and more intimate, some are very expensive, others are much more affordable, some have very romantic ambiance to them, and others have water slides and really cool things that attract kids. So when you're wanting to visit La Fortuna, and if you want to go to the hot springs, you will find so many options, but it pays to spend a little time to figure out which one is perfect for you. And before we move on from hot springs, I just want to mention that the Tabacon hot springs, which are featured at the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, are a little bit different. So whereas all the other hot springs in La Fortuna have these man-made pools that you can soak in, Tabacon also, in addition to the pools, has a natural free-flowing thermal water river. And so that's pretty cool, because in order to feel the hot springs there, you physically have to step into the river and then soak in them. So a little bit of an exclusive experience if you choose Tabacon. So a different attraction to the La Fortuna area is the hanging bridges. And I received this question a lot about the hanging bridges, which is, why would I go to the hanging bridges if I can just tour the rainforest by the volcano? And the reason to go to the hanging bridges is because they exist at the top of the rainforest canopy. And why that matters is because if you're interested in seeing wildlife that resides at the top of the trees, such as monkeys or sloths or a wide variety of birds, you're more likely to find it if you're touring the top of the treetops instead of the forest floor. The forest floor. So La Fortuna has 2 hanging bridge parks. The one that's pictured here is called the Mystico Park. And I love this place for a couple of reasons. For one, the paths, as you can see in the photo on the left, are flat and fairly easy to traverse. It also has a wheelchair accessible trail, which makes it, a more inclusive type of activity. And it's really great for families. So it doesn't really matter if what you're looking for or the type of travel group that you're coming to Costa Rica with, chances are you're going to love the Mystico Park. Now, the photo on the right is of one of the 6 suspension bridges that you will find inside the park. There's also 10 other stationary bridges. And a little bit later in the show, I'm going to show you a video of what it feels like to cross a hanging bridge. But just so you can see what the hanging bridges look like inside the Mystico Park, this is one of those photos. So now we get to zip lining, which is most people's favorite activity in Costa Rica. And La Fortuna is a really great place to do it. Just off the top of my head, I think there's 6 different zipline tours that you can experience in La Fortuna alone. Truthfully, if you're wanting to go ziplining, you can do it in a lot of different areas of Costa Rica, but I would argue that the best are in La Fortuna and Monteverde. So this particular tour is offered through a company called Arenal Mundo Aventura, and they have a fabulous 12 cable zipline tour that shows not just one waterfall, but 2 waterfalls. This video of my husband ziplining on one of the cables shows the waterfall called the Pino Blanco waterfall. So let's watch. Oh, Julianne, you know what? I don't know if we're gonna have sound.
We do. Perfect.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was sort of the quintessential ziplining experience, which involved literally zipping across a cable high above the forest floor. It's exhilarating and a ton of fun, and I highly recommend doing it. So I mentioned that the waterfall that we just saw in that video was called the Pino Blanco waterfall, but the most popular waterfall in La Fortuna is actually called the Rio Fortuna waterfall, or the La Fortuna waterfall. Some people nickname it that. So at this waterfall, which is pictured on your screen, you can see that it is very powerful, very photogenic, and you can also access its base. So a little tip, if you want to access the base of this waterfall, you have to put in the work. So there is a long staircase of about 500 steps that you need to climb or descend to get down to the base of the waterfall. But if you make that trek, I promise it will be worth it. You will get fabulous photos like the one in the middle. And if you want to, you can also swim in the river a little bit downstream from the waterfall. Now, if you want to see the waterfall, but you don't want to walk 500 steps down to the bottom, you have another option. So just beyond the entrance to the waterfall is this gorgeous panoramic viewpoint where you can see the waterfall at a distance as pictured in the photo on the right. So definitely go to see the La Fortuna waterfall. If you don't want to make the trek down, you don't have to. Just go to the viewpoint just beyond the entrance. So something that I'm going to be doing during this show tonight is featuring an off the beaten path kind of tip or recommendation for each of the 10 destinations that I'm hoping to cover. So for La Fortuna, it was really tricky to come up with an off the beaten path recommendation because the area is so touristy that everything is on the beaten path. But I did come up with one, which is to opt for the buffet bar at the back of the Soda Bicas restaurant. Now, Soda Bicas is an incredibly popular traditional Costa Rican restaurant right in downtown La Fortuna. But everybody that goes there typically orders food off the menu. And not everybody knows that there is this awesome little buffet bar hidden at the back of the restaurant. So if you really want to try some really good homemade Costa Rican food, check out the buffet bar at the back of the restaurant. You can choose what you want to eat. The waitress can make you a custom plate, and it's a really great way to try a bunch of different foods for a very affordable cost. Okay, so now we're jumping over to Monteverde, which is about 3 to 3.5 hours from La Fortuna by car. And this is also my husband's absolute favorite destination in Costa Rica. So Monteverde is a mountaintop destination. I like to describe it as the yin to La Fortuna's yang. So in La Fortuna, where you get a lot of adventure and adrenaline-inducing adventure, and big billboards advertising those adventures. You won't get that in Monteverde. So Monteverde is typically quieter, calmer. The vibe there is just calmer, and it offers more gentle nature exploration as opposed to like that adrenaline-inducing nature exploration. So the reason to go to Monteverde is to immerse yourself in the cloud forest. So the cloud forest scientifically is very different than the rainforest, but I'm not going to bore you with all of those details. What I am going to tell you is that the difference that you will note between the rainforest and the cloud forest is in its atmosphere. So in the rainforest, you will typically feel quite humid, and the space you'll be hiking or walking in will feel relatively open. Whereas in the cloud forest, because those exist at a higher elevation, you'll feel colder temperatures, the air feels denser, damper. The cloud forest typically feels quite misty because it is a forest among the clouds. So you can actually see the white clouds roll in and roll past you or across your trail in front of you, which is pretty cool. And it kind of lends the destination this eerie, almost mysterious kind of vibe. So visiting the cloud forest is actually quite easy. All you need to do is go to Monteverde and choose one of a number of private reserves that are in the area. The one that's featured here is the Monteverde Reserve, which is the most popular reserve. You can also select some other ones. A couple of my favorites are Santa Elena, Valle Escondido, the Children's Eternal Rainforest. These are all opportunities to explore the rainforest, but at different sites. And I included the photo of that cute little hummingbird in the bottom right corner because cloud forests are fabulous places to see hummingbirds. So you can see hummingbirds all over Costa Rica, but you can see a wide variety of them and in great numbers in the cloud forest. So something else that's really cool about Monteverde is that it has so many orchids. And rumor has it that Monteverde has the highest diversity of orchids in the world. And I'm not 100% sure if it's true, but I'm going to choose to believe it because I've seen so many that it sounds true to me. So seeing orchids in Monteverde is very easy. All you need to do is walk through one of these reserves. But if you want to see a lot of them or a variety of them, then definitely check out the Monteverde Orchid Garden. So this is a relatively small outdoor garden where you can walk around and see all these different types of orchids. Many of them are miniature versions, so you need to walk around with your trusty magnifying glass in hand to see them. And it's pretty cool to learn about these flowers that play such a significant role in the environment and also see how small they can be. Some are about the size of the tip of a pencil. So when we were talking about La Fortuna, I brought up the hanging bridges, and another great place to experience those is in Monteverde. So in Monteverde, there are several places that have hanging bridges, although my favorite are at Sky Adventures. And these hanging bridges are called the Sky Walk Hanging Bridges. And I'm just going to show you a quick video of me walking along one of these bridges, just so you can see a little bit of the cloud forest landscape. You can also see how long some of these bridges are and how high up they are. And fun fact, Sky Adventures is home to the longest hanging bridge in all of Monteverde, which is about 235 meters or 775 feet. So here we go. so the last photo that I'm going to show you about the Monteverde area is this photo of the Monteverde Villa Lodge. Now, this is one of my favorite places to stay at in Monteverde, but I chose these photos to show you because they epitomize what accommodations look like in Monteverde. So they're very rustic, typically very small, and also affordable. In contrast to La Fortuna, where you find a lot of superior quality accommodations, a lot of resorts, especially those that have hot springs on site. Here in Monteverde, everything is much less expensive, much more rustic and down to earth, and you'll get a lot of lodges and a lot of cabins. So my off the beaten path tip for Monteverde is to check out the destination's art scene. I honestly have no idea why this isn't publicized more about Monteverde, but there is a fabulous art community in the Monteverde area. And there's a lot of really great art studios and galleries that you can visit and buy souvenirs from. If you're interested in buying art in Costa Rica, definitely check out Monteverde. A lot of times you can buy it direct from the artist. Okay, so Julianne, I'm gonna get things ready for the next part of the presentation. Tell me, what did you think about La Fortuna Monteverde?
Gosh, well, I was like, man, that looks awesome. And then the next scene, I was like, man, that looks awesome. And the video of the bridge that you were walking over, it just made me think, living in the Seattle area, we have a temperate rainforest here, but I just love how different a tropical rainforest is, and just the differences there and how it really feels different, even though it's a similar.
Yeah,
that's rainforest. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's a really good point.
Mm-hmm. And also just how quiet it was when you're walking over the bridge, and just imagining being there, just so peaceful and quiet, but there's still so much life all around you. And I know it just seems like you're almost not supposed to be there. You're just a little guest and you're like, oh, I'm just passing through. Yeah.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And that's the thing about tourism in Costa Rica, is that it is kind of built in harmony with nature. And so you're able to walk through the forest. And I mean, later on in the presentation, I'm going to show you a video of a very close encounter with wildlife. And it's kind of incredible that you can get so close within these habitats and just kind of coexist there. It's a really beautiful and humbling thing.
I love it. I can't wait to see more. Let's go.
Okay, so now we're going to leave the northern inlands and head to the Pacific coast. Now, Costa Rica's Pacific coast is quite long, so there are a ton of coastal destinations that you can choose to visit. For brevity's sake, for tonight, we're only going to feature 5, and we're kind of going to whiz through them. But we're going to start off in a place called Tamarindo. So Tamarindo is located in the northern Pacific side of the country, and it's in a province called Guanacaste. So a lot of times people will hear the word Guanacaste associated with Tamarindo. Now, Tamarindo is one of the most vibrant and social places that you could station yourself in Costa Rica. So the town is lined with so many plazas, shops, surf schools, souvenir stores, tourism offices, restaurants, hotels, you name it. It's a very concentrated destination, and there are always a lot of people there, even in the low season. So it's definitely a good place to visit if you want to be around other people. And on the flip side, if you don't want to be around crowds, it might not be the best place for you. So here we are on Playa Tamarindo. Now, this is the main beach that fronts the town of Tamarindo. And I like this photo because it shows how there's some restaurants and bars that are right on the sand. It also shows how busy the beach typically is. And I think this photo, if I remember correctly, it was taken maybe a little bit before sunset. And Playa Tamarindo is the place to be for sunset. You can just imagine, Tamarindo is west facing, so the sunsets are absolutely glorious here. The beach is also a really popular spot for surf lessons. So there are a lot of destinations in Costa Rica where you can surf. We're going to cover a couple of them tonight. Tamarindo is one of them, and especially great if you're just learning how to surf. There are a couple different break options. So it doesn't matter if you're a beginner or intermediate level or advanced level, there's definitely a spot for surfing for you. The gentleman in this photo has a t-shirt that says "Witch's Rock." Witch's Rock is one of 2 of my favorite surf schools in Tamarindo. The other one is Iguana Surf. Both have been around for decades. Both are backed by teams of really great people, so I don't think you could go wrong with either one. And I'll also just mention that in the backdrop of this photo, you can see the dry forest. So the dry forest is a very unique ecosystem, and it fans out over the Guanacaste region, including Tamarindo. So during the wet season, the dry forest doesn't look a lot unlike the rainforest, but come the dry season, the dry forest sheds a lot of its leaves and ends up looking very brown and brittle. So this is kind of a typical scene of what you will see in Tamarindo or anywhere else in Guanacaste if you visit during the dry season. So I've included this photo about restaurants in Tamarindo because it pays to know that international food is what you eat when you go to Tamarindo. It is hard to find good Costa Rican food in Tamarindo. So definitely, if you're one of those people that doesn't really want to eat Costa Rican food, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, day in and day out throughout your trip, and you want to have access to a lot of great international food, Tamarindo is a good spot for you to be in. Now, this place is a food hall called El Mercadito. And as you can see on the signs, they have everything from French food, Mexican food, Argentinian food, Venezuelan food, you name it. This perfectly sums up the gastronomy in Tamarindo. And of course, we cannot stop talking about Tamarindo unless we address the nightlife first. So here we are at El Vaquero Pub, which is my favorite place to grab drinks after dark. It is very low-key. You can tell by the picnic tables and the people kind of just hanging out. It is also a popular surfers hangout, so a lot of people come here at the end of the day just to chat about the day's waves. And the owners of this pub, the owners of this pub also have their own microbrewery on site. So this is also a really great place to grab some quality craft ales. So my off the beaten path tip for Tamarindo is to consider getting outside of the town and staying on the outskirts at a rental home. Now, rental homes are becoming more and more popular in Costa Rica, as I'm sure they are kind of everywhere else in the world, with the rise of Airbnb and Vrbo and Flipkey. There's a ton of options for rentals in Costa Rica. But because Tamarindo is such a kind of concentrated, loud, vibrant social community, if you find the noise to be a little too much, it may be a good option to get out of the town, especially if you have a rental car and you're able to drive yourself to and from the town whenever you want to access something there. This particular place that's pictured here is a place called Villas La Paz. It is one of my favorite rentals in the whole country. It's about a 30-minute drive outside of Tamarindo in a tiny hamlet called Matapalo, and it is a great option for groups. They have tons of big villas that accommodate, I believe, up to maybe 16 people, 12 or 16 people. So a really good option if you are traveling with a group and you don't want to pay a ton of money on hotel rooms. Okay, so now we're going to leave Tamarindo and travel down the coast to the Nicoya Peninsula. Now, the Nicoya Peninsula is very different from Guanacaste and Tamarindo. And this photo kind of sums up the top 3 reasons to go to the Nicoya Peninsula. 1 is to practice yoga, 2 is to practice surf, and 3 is to enjoy beautiful beaches. So we're going to look at 2 destinations on the Nicoya Peninsula tonight. The first is Nosara, and the other is Santa Teresa. Now, both of these are surf and yoga meccas in Costa Rica. They are both fabulous, but there are some slight differences between them. So let's start with Nosara. So Nosara, I would describe as boho chic. So there are a ton of international expats that live in Nosara or vacation there quite frequently, and they've kind of lent this bohemian vibe to the area. And one really great thing about the destination is that it has a ton of vegan and vegetarian food options. Now, this is important because even though you can get vegan and vegetarian food in every region of Costa Rica, it's kind of an anomaly everywhere else, but in Nosara, it is the norm. So if you're vegan or vegetarian, you will love this place. You'll also see a ton of really small, cute roadside boutiques. So if you like to shop, it's a great spot for that. And in true Nosara style, you can see in the photo at the bottom left corner on your screen, this cute little boutique is built out of a repurposed Airstream trailer. Very Nosara. In the top right corner, you'll see a photo of tuk-tuks. So if you're not familiar with tuk-tuks, they are kind of a form of taxi, and they're the most common way of traveling around Nosara. So I should mention that the destination of Nosara is actually 3 communities in one. There's an area called Guiones, an area called North Guiones, and another area called Pilata. And several kilometers separate these 3 communities. So unless you're going to rent a car, it's a good idea to use one of these tuk-tuks to get around, or rent a bike because walking between them can be difficult. It's also important to note that the roads that lead into and out of Nosara aren't in the best shape. So this is one destination of Costa Rica where a lot of travelers opt not to rent a vehicle. And lastly, in the bottom right corner, we have a picture of Coconut Harry's. Coconut Harry's is a really great, fun, long-standing surf shop right in Guiones, so Nosara. And they're just a friendly group. If you need anything, a board rental, clothes, anything like that, they can help you out. So my off the beaten path tip about Nosara is to discover sustainable surf with the Safari Surf School. Now, I could talk about sustainability in Costa Rica for the rest of the night and probably the next week. But unfortunately, we don't have enough time for that tonight. So what I will say is that the Safari Surf School is not greenwashing. They're a legitimate business that is making surf, like the activity of surfing, eco-friendly. And I definitely would recommend reaching out to them to learn more, go on their website, read what it is that they're doing to try to understand how an activity like surfing can be eco-friendly. If you want more information about them or other sustainable experience in Costa Rica, consider picking up a copy of the Wanderlust magazine. Now, this is a British publication, but you can purchase digital copies online. I just wrote a 10-page spread on sustainable experiences in Costa Rica for that magazine. So if you are an eco-minded traveler and you want to learn different ways to kind of reduce your carbon footprint while you travel to Costa Rica, check out that magazine article. It will tell you everything that you need to know. Okay, so now we're going to move on to, oops, sorry guys. Move on to Santa Teresa. Now, Santa Teresa is also on the Nicoya Peninsula, but further down the coast from Nosara, near the end and the tip of the peninsula. So very much like Nosara, Santa Teresa is quiet, kind of boho, offers a lot of vegan and vegetarian food as well, and is a surf and yoga hotbed. So the difference between Nosara and Santa Teresa, and I should have mentioned this back when we were talking about Nosara, is that Nosara observes quiet hours. So come 10 o'clock at night, most places shut down. There isn't much nightlife at all. Everybody goes to bed early so they can rise early and hit the yoga shalas and the waves. In Santa Teresa, it's a little bit different. There's tons of yoga, there's tons of surfing, there's also an active nightlife. So I would place Santa Teresa neatly in the middle, somewhere between Nosara and Tamarindo. So moving to these photos, in the top left corner, you can see a beautiful beach called Playa Los Suecos. Now, this is actually in a community called Malpais. And much like Nosara, that was 3 communities in one, Santa Teresa is also 3 communities in one. So you have Santa Teresa, Carmen, and Malpais. And so this beach in Malpais is one of my favorite spots to retreat to in the whole country. It's well known, but doesn't really receive a lot of visitors. It's a great place to practice yoga on your own, and it's obviously very beautiful. In the top right corner, we have a picture of a surfer surfing at Playa Carmen, which is kind of the main beach right in the center of town, and it's a great spot for advanced level surfers. And at the bottom, we have a picture just of the main street in Santa Teresa. So it's essentially one really long street. You can walk up and down it quite easily. A lot of people opt to rent ATVs. And as you can see, it's a very dusty road, a very dusty destination. So something else I want to mention just before we leave Santa Teresa is that this is a really great place to participate in surf and yoga retreats. So there, as I mentioned before, there are a lot of places where you can surf in Costa Rica, but there is no better place where you can do an all-inclusive surf and yoga package than Santa Teresa. There are so many package options. You can choose high-quality accommodations, low-quality accommodations if you're on a budget, or you can choose options that include meals or surf video analysis, day trips to attractions on the outskirts. So if you want that kind of all-inclusive surf yoga retreat experience, look no further than Santa Teresa. That said, if you don't want that experience, you can still come to Santa Teresa. There are tons of yoga centers that offer drop-in yoga classes. There's a lot of surf schools who will happily give you a surf lesson or rent you a board. So you don't have to come on a package, but they're certainly available if you want one. Okay, so my off the beaten path tip for Santa Teresa is to visit a beach called Playa Tropical, which is on Isla Tortuga, or the Turtle Island. Now, anybody who knows about Costa Rica is probably very confused right now because they're wondering why I picked Isla Tortuga, a very popular island, as an off the beaten path locale. But here's the trick. Majority of people who take tours to Isla Tortuga do so with companies that visit a beach called Playa Tolinga. And this is why that island gets very, very busy, because everybody goes to the same spot. So I discovered a different tour operator called Turismo Crudu, and they're based on the Nicoya Peninsula as well. And when they lead tours to Isla Tortuga, they opt to visit Playa Tropical, and nobody else does. So when you go, you feel like you have this secluded private island all to yourself, and it's absolutely beautiful. So check out this video. I mean, we all know what a beautiful beach looks like, but just for a quick 30-second moment of relaxation, I'll play it for you. Oh, it's so gorgeous. I wish I was there right now. It's so nice. Okay, so we're going to continue moving down the Pacific coast. Now we're in the Central Pacific region at a place called Manuel Antonio. Now, Manuel Antonio, if you have done any research about trips to Costa Rica at all, I guarantee that you've come across Manuel Antonio. It is one of the most visited beach destinations in the country, and it is also home to the most visited national park, which is the Manuel Antonio National Park. So here we are inside the national park. You can see in the top right corner, there's a beautiful beach. This is Playa Manuel Antonio, but the park actually has several beautiful beaches. Personally, my favorite is a beach called Playa Espadilla Sur, but there's lots of options that you can beach hop from. The best thing about this park is that there's so much wildlife and it is not shy. So I can practically guarantee that you will see at least monkeys, if not monkeys and sloths inside this park. The monkeys are so comfortable with people that they just come up to you when you're sunbathing on the sand. It's amazing. And the photo on the left shows the mangrove ecosystem. So this is yet another ecosystem that Costa Rica has, and you will walk through it as you tour the park. So there's a lot of information that you can learn about mangroves. I'm not going to go into it, but it's very interesting to see how the ecosystem works. But it's also kind of, it's visually appealing as well, because the mangrove ecosystem is full of these intertwined branches. And it's just kind of really cool to see and to walk through. It almost feels like a tunnel. So I should mention that unlike a lot of the other destinations in Costa Rica, Manuel Antonio is not a concentrated town. It's a community that is spread out over a hill. And so when you have all of these little establishments like hotels and resorts and restaurants spread out over a hill, you get tons of beautiful Pacific Ocean views. So I featured one of those views here. That photo was taken from a restaurant called El Avión. El Avión translates to the airplane, and these are the photos that you see at the bottom of your screen. So El Avión is a very popular restaurant. Honestly, it's a little bit kitschy, but it's still fun. It's a cool photo opportunity. Kids really love it. And it's a restaurant that's built around an old cargo plane. And if you're of drinking age, you can check out the inside of the fuselage of the plane because they have a bar. So for Manuel Antonio, just to touch on the restaurants again, there are a lot of really great places to eat in Manuel Antonio. You can get barbecued food, fine dining, cute little cafes, you name it, Manuel Antonio has it. And as I mentioned before, majority of those places will bless you with beautiful views. So my off the beaten path tip for the Manuel Antonio area is to actually get out of Manuel Antonio, head further down the coast to a waterfall called the Nayaca waterfall. And I almost don't even know what to say about this waterfall because I feel like the photo says it all. It's such an incredible place to visit. It's sunken deep in the rainforest. You have to either hike or take a 4x4 ride or horseback ride to get to it. And then once you're there, you just see this beautiful mammoth 2-tier waterfall, and you can swim at the base. It's just one of those places that you want to spend a couple of hours just relaxing and appreciating the fact that you're in beautiful Costa Rica. So our last stop on our trip down the Pacific coast is to Drake Bay. Now, I should mention that the Pacific coast has another small peninsula in the southern Pacific region, and that's called the Osa Peninsula. And the Osa Peninsula is quite far-flung. It is very remote, and there isn't a lot of development there. So if you choose to visit Drake Bay, you're choosing sort of to go off the grid. And a lot of people love that about the destination. This is also where you'll find a lot of wildlife, and not just that, but a lot of Costa Rica's elusive wildlife. So I'm thinking wildcats like jaguars and pumas, and the ocelot that's pictured here. You can see those on in the Osa Peninsula. And also you can access a lot of very tranquil tours, like this lady here is kayaking through one of the popular rivers there. Lots of getting back to nature, lots of escaping, getting off the grid, and just a lot of kind of calm and quiet and escaping a lot of the overt tourism that you will find in other places in Costa Rica. So something that's really cool about Drake Bay is that the majority of people arrive by boat. So in recent years, there's been a bit of development to the road system there. And so now you can arrive by car. I've done it. It's not too bad, but because the roads aren't that great yet, most people still opt to take boats to Drake Bay. So that is an adventure in itself. It's about an hour boat ride, bumpy, kind of crazy through the ocean. In an area where you often see whales breaching. So that's a really cool experience to look out for. And then once you arrive at Drake Bay, there's almost nothing there. There's this tiny community called Agujitas, very little development. And this is when you realize that you are in the heart of the jungle. So each of the accommodations that you'll find in Drake Bay are spread out along the coast, and you reach them either by hiking through the forest to get to them or by taking a boat ride to the accommodations dock. So this is the photo that I've chosen to show here. It's a photo of Aguila de Osa, which is one of the hotels that you'll find in Drake Bay. And I just picked it to show the dock and how you would arrive at this particular hotel and how it's got this beautiful jungle backdrop behind it. It's gorgeous. So the reason to go to the Osa Peninsula, if not to kind of, for those other reasons I mentioned before, to kind of escape civilization and get back to nature, is to tour the Corcovado National Park. Now, the Corcovado National Park is, well, a lot of people call it the crown jewel of Costa Rica. It's a very large national park. It takes up the majority of the Osa Peninsula. It's full of wildlife. There's a lot of conservation work being done there. It's home to not just secondary forest, but also some virgin primary forest, which is really cool to see. And there's multiple sectors, but the main sector, which is right in the heart of the park, is the Sirena sector. And this is the Sirena Ranger Station, which is the only place that you can currently sleep overnight in the park. So if you're interested in that experience, check out the Sirena Ranger Station. So next I'm going to share with you probably my favorite video that I've ever taken in Costa Rica. This is a rare sighting of a tapir. Now I say tapir or danta because that's what we say in Costa Rica, but a lot of people call them tapirs. So this tapir appeared out of nowhere while my husband and I were hiking through the Corcovado National Park. And it was such an incredible experience. We actually saw 3, although only 1 is featured on the video. And it was crazy because these tapirs are supposed to be aggressive, and they're supposed to be a predator to the jaguar, if you can imagine that. And yet here we were entering their home, coming within a few feet with them, and didn't feel threatened. I didn't feel threatened by them. They clearly didn't feel threatened by us. And it was a really beautiful moment that we could kind of share this space and be welcome in their home. So without further ado, I'll play the video. That tapir stole my heart. Okay, so the off the beaten path tip that I have for you for the Drake Bay area is to explore the coastal trail. So hiking this trail isn't necessarily off the beaten path, but you have to get off the beaten path to explore it. So what I mean by that is from the town, the community of Agujitas, which is the central part of Drake Bay, there is this trail that follows along the coast and goes as far as one of the entrances to the Corcovado National Park. Now that is about a 6-hour hike away. And most people don't hike all the way to the park because after 6 hours, they're tired and they don't want to turn around and have to come all the way back. But what you can do is hike for as long as you want. So this section of the coast has several secluded beaches. There's a really cute kind of turtle hatchery that you can check out along the way, or you can just walk through the jungle. It's not a clear path, but it's obvious enough that you won't get lost. And you can just go at your own pace. You don't need a tour guide, and you can just immerse yourself in this jungle and love every second of it. Okay, so Julianne, that wraps up our time on the Pacific coast. I'm just gonna get our photos ready for the Caribbean coast. What did you think about the Pacific?
That was awesome. I was just answering a question about a taper. So that's fun. You never know what you're going to get on Monday Night Travel. And I do have a question for you, Nikki, just as you're pulling this up, if you can multitask. A lot of people are wondering, what is the best time of year to go to Costa Rica?
Yeah, so I guess I can't multitask.
Yeah.
I'll answer your question first. So that really depends on where your priorities lie. So I usually tell people if you really want good weather, then you have to come during the dry season. Now, it's a bit tricky to say exactly when that starts and finishes. Mother Nature is unpredictable, but usually it runs between January and April most years. If you don't care so much about the weather and you're kind of like that type of person that's like, oh, give me the rain, I'm going to the rainforest, I expect it, I don't mind, then I would recommend going in the low season or the green season or off season. So that would be the period between May and December, because everything is much more affordable. Hotels drop their rates. Some tours will drop their rates, but even if they don't, you won't get as many large groups on your guided tours. And you just have a lot more availability, a lot more flexibility. Yeah, so if you don't care too much about the weather, travel during the low season. If weather's important to you, go for the high season. There we go. Can you see that, Julianne? Okay.
Yes, and I love it
Okay.
already.
Okay, so now we have moved over to the Caribbean coast. Now the Caribbean coast is much smaller and shorter, so there aren't as many destinations to visit over there as there are on the Pacific, but there are still lots of reasons to go. So what we're going to do is split the Caribbean coast into two sections, the Northern Caribbean and the Southern Caribbean. So we're going to head to the Southern Caribbean first. And the hub of that region is a beach town called Puerto Viejo de Talamanca. And the locals who speak the local dialect of Patois call it Walaba. Now, Puerto Viejo is, and truly the full Southern Caribbean region, is basked in this amazing Afro-descendant culture. So this is where you will find the largest percentage of Costa Rica's Afro-descendant population. And it's also where you'll get a lot of fantastic Caribbean-inspired food. The photo on the left here shows a typical Caribbean-inspired plate. It has coconut rice and beans, chicken and Caribbean sauce, a green salad, and then patacones, which are smashed and fried plantains. It's also a very culturally rich region, lots of music, lots of calypso music and reggae music playing on repeat. And it's just a very joyous part of Costa Rica. Because that culture, that Afro-descendant culture just shines in the region, it's hard to go and not fall in love with it. So one crop that grows really well on the Caribbean coast is cacao. And if you aren't familiar with cacao, you might know it by its other name, which is chocolate. So the picture on the left shows a typical cacao pod. Now, sometimes they can be orange or red in color. This particular one was yellow. Now, the chocolate actually hides in a purple seed that is inside that white, fibrous, almost tangy tasting pulp. And once you take that seed out away from the pulp and you dry it out and you grind it up, that's how chocolate is made. Now, that is a very brief description of how chocolate is made. Now, if you want to learn more about that, a great place to do a chocolate tour is a place called Caribbeans. Now, this is a chocolate, they call themselves a chocolate tasting lounge, but it's essentially a cafe. You can get chocolate drinks, baked goods made with chocolate, and you can even buy homemade chocolate bars, which are to die for. They're very addictive. Limit yourself to maybe only 10 if you can. They also run chocolate tours out the back of their shop where you will hike up a little hill and see kind of a demonstration of how chocolate is made. Definitely worth doing if you are a chocolate lover. So very quickly, the off the beaten path experience for the Southern Caribbean region is to see the great green macaws at Era Manzanillo's reintroduction station. So there are a lot of draws to the Caribbean, beautiful beaches, the chocolate tour, all of the culture, and that tends to take a lot of the attention away from the smaller attractions. But this is a very small attraction that I absolutely love, and I tell everybody to go. And even if you're not an avid bird watcher, if you would appreciate seeing these gorgeous, colorful birds up close in the wild, and for more than just a fleeting moment, you have to do this tour. It's very short, it's only about an hour, so it doesn't take up much of your time. And all you do is visit this observation deck where the team that takes care of these birds places the food out, and these birds come flocking in and eat all of this food, and you can just watch them, and they're right there, right in front of you. It's just incredible to be able to be that close to wildlife and that much wildlife. Okay, so now we're going to jump up to the Northern Caribbean. Now, this is an area of Costa Rica that doesn't have a ton of tourism, but it does have Tortuguero. So Tortuguero is a very unique destination in Costa Rica. First off, it's a car-free community. So you will not find any cars in this community whatsoever. So automatically, that lends it to becoming a very kind of calm, quiet, I don't want to say zero pollution, but a relatively pollution-free zone, which is really, really nice. And the thing about Tortuguero is that it is the Amazon of Costa Rica. So it's kind of made up of these serpentine canals that go deep into the forest. It's surrounded by all these wetland ecosystems. You can see a ton of wildlife, but specifically kind of water-based wildlife. So a lot of water birds, crocodiles, caimans, even manatees, if you're lucky. So if you're into kind of gentle water exploration, like boating, canoeing, kayaking, that kind of stuff, definitely check out Tortuguero. It is wildly peaceful and tranquil, and definitely a not to miss destination. So the off the beaten path, off the beaten path experience for the Northern Caribbean is to volunteer with the Sea Turtle Conservancy. Now, a lot of people go to Tortuguero to see the turtles, and there is a turtle season. It typically runs between July and October, give or take, but turtles can arrive as early as March, so you might get lucky and see them before July. And if you want to go to Tortuguero to see the turtles, that's great. You can participate in your organized turtle tour. With some luck, see some little turtles kind of come up to onto the beach, lay their eggs, and then scurry back to the ocean. If you want to do more than that, I recommend volunteering. If you have the time and the energy and the interest, volunteer. Usually it takes about a week or 2 or 3 weeks, so you do need to have a bit of a time commitment to do that. But if you like turtles or like the sea life and you want to really make a difference, give them a call, set up a volunteer stint, and do your part. So now we get to my absolute favorite activity to experience in all of Costa Rica, which is whitewater rafting. Now, I am 100% biased because my husband was a whitewater rafting guide and because we met on this particular river. But that bias aside, the Pequare River is a stunning river in Costa Rica. I believe at one point National Geographic called it the second most beautiful river in the world for river scenery, and it's very deserving of that acknowledgement. So the river itself is awesome. You can get these really big class 3, class 4 rapids. But even if you don't care about the rafting experience, if you don't have any experience and don't really know what a good rafting experience is, you have to take this tour to see the scenery. So it enters the jungle. It's flanked on both sides by these really tall mountains that are covered with trees. There's a cable that crosses overhead that indigenous groups use to cross the river. There are these natural waterfalls that are like pouring down the sides of these mountains. There's these really narrow canyons that you can float through where the water grows really still and you can actually jump out of the raft and kind of float through this section of the river. It's just one of those incredible, best of all Costa Rica kind of experiences. So I definitely recommend doing the tour if you can. It's family friendly, but there is a minimum age requirement of 12 years. So that's something to keep in mind. And I will just mention that this handsome guy in the front left picture is my hubby. He is also the rafting guide on the photo in the bottom right corner. And he took this video for us to show just kind of what the average rafting experience is on the Pequare River. Rafting experiences in general in Costa Rica are very rain dependent. So when we receive a lot of rain, that increases the water levels and that affects the rapids. So obviously, if you travel during the wet season, when we get a lot of rain, the rapids are going to be higher. And if you travel during the dry season, when we get less rain, the rapids will be lower. So this is sort of an average experience for a trip taken during the dry season.
Forward. 1, 2, 1, 2. Forward, forward. Hard.
Forward, hard. 1, 2, 1.
Lean in, lean in.
Hold on.
Grab the paddle, Clay.
Grab the paddle.
Get up. Backward, backward. Stop, stop. Forward, hard. Hard. Get down, get down. Get up. Forward.
Okay, so that is the quintessential rafting experience on Macquarie. It is, like I said, kind of one of those must-do activities. If you have the time and you have the funds to do it, I highly recommend it. Okay, so Julianne, that wraps up our time on the Caribbean coast. Didn't know if you had anything that you wanted to pop in here and say just before I head over to the capital city of San Jose.
Well, the river rafting looked great. I love the sloth in the beginning and the birds. That would be a neat experience. I love the backdoor experiences you're sharing with us tonight. I do have one question a lot of people have been asking. What is the bug situation and like venomous bugs or snakes? A lot of people have been wondering if that's something to worry about.
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. Well, there are bugs. But in terms of dangerous bugs, I will tell you that I have been exploring Costa Rica for 16 years now, and I've encountered one poisonous snake. And I do a lot of the deep woods exploration. So not to say that they don't exist. There are poisonous snakes in Costa Rica. The tour guides are wonderfully trained to recognize them. I don't think they would ever put you in harm's way if they happen to encounter one. But yeah, they are out there, but it's not like they're, crawling around at your feet everywhere that you step. In terms of bugs, some people complain about mosquitoes. I personally don't really get bitten by them. I think it kind of depends on the person. Something that I will mention that bugs a lot that bugs a lot of people are the geckos. So we have these tiny little almost transparent geckos, and they get into hotel rooms a lot. Now they're harmless, they're not poisonous, they won't hurt you. If you come near them or go near them, they will scurry away, but they do find their way into hotel rooms somehow. So just maybe be aware of that, and also I don't want to tell people to be okay with bugs. I know a lot of people don't like bugs, but it is the rainforest, and a lot of the outdoors can find its way indoors. So maybe just kind of having a go with the flow kind of attitude when you're visiting will help, to kind of maybe ease some of the nerves, or at least in that moment when you discover a gecko, just kind of know that it's not going to harm you in any sort of way.
Yeah, that is a good tip. I would not have expected geckos, so I'm glad you shared. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So just very briefly, I think we're kind of running out of time here. I'm just going to cover San Jose, which is the capital city. Now, some of you might be wondering why I left San Jose being the capital city to the end and not to the beginning, or not put it in the beginning. And that's because most travelers don't opt to spend time in San Jose. So it's not because there isn't a lot there that would warrant a visit. It's just that there is so much other stuff elsewhere in the country that a lot of people don't have the time to add a day in San Jose to their itinerary. So I receive a question that I receive quite often from people is, should I spend a day in San Jose? So should I take time away from somewhere else to tour the capital city? And when I answer this question, I usually ask two questions in return. One is, do you like museums? If you like museums, you will probably love San Jose. So there are a ton of great museums that you can visit. My favorite three are the National Museum, which is featured right here in this photo. The other two are the Gold Museum, which is features on the left, and the Jade Museum, which is featured, on the right. Now, these three museums are quite small, relatively small. You can tour all three of them in a day. So if you're into museums, give yourself an extra day in San Jose, either at the start or the end of your trip, and tour all of those. Now, if you're not a museum person, the only other reason I would really recommend taking time away from somewhere else and slotting it in for San Jose is if there are attractions on the outskirts of San Jose that you want to see. So some of the more popular attractions that you might want to tour on a day trip from San Jose include Sarchi and the Poás volcano. So just looking at Sarchi first, Sarchi is the artisan capital of Costa Rica. It's where you will find people making and painting the traditional ox carts that you will see all over Costa Rica. If you're into art, it's a really great place where you can see the artists, performing their crafts. The gentleman in the photo of the right, I think if I remember correctly, his name was Edgar. He was lovely, and he kind of let me try my hand at painting. Also in the photo in the middle, I was able to glaze one of these ox cart wheels. So it's a very hands-on destination and kind of cool if you're interested in that kind of artistic side to Costa Rica. I also mentioned the Poás volcano. So the Poás volcano is unlike the Arenal volcano in that at Poás, you can actually visit the crater. So Poás is very easy to visit. You can drive pretty much to the entrance. It's a very short, flat trail to the crater of the Poás volcano. And once you're there, you can peer over the edge and look at this very active volcano that is smoking right in front of your eyes. So I took this video so that you could see more or less what you'll see at the crater. Okay, so just to sum up, if you want to go to San Jose, I would recommend doing that if you're interested in museums or if there is an attraction on the outskirts of the city that you'd like to visit on a day trip from San Jose. If neither of those things really pique your interest, then I would consider skipping San Jose and adding the extra time to one of the other destinations that you decide to visit. So my last off the beaten path tip for the night is for the San Jose area. And this is to tour the family run El Toledo coffee farm in a town called Atenas. Now, I absolutely love this coffee farm. I've toured a lot of the larger coffee farms, Costa Rica. We have one for Starbucks. And a couple other kind of big scale coffee farms. But this one is so small and so quaint, and it provides such a lovely experience. It's run by 3 generations of a Costa Rican family. And what's awesome about their coffee production is that it is both organic and sustainable. So one quick thing that I'd like to share about their coffee farm is that they are zero waste. And what that means is at other coffee farms, when they extract the coffee bean from the coffee fruit, they throw away the fruit and only use the bean. But at El Toledo, they take the fruit that would normally be discarded and they repurpose it and create coffee wine, coffee juice, and coffee tea. So it's a really great place to go if you want to learn about coffee production and hang out with a really friendly Costa Rican family and support organic growth. Okay, and that wraps up our time in San Jose. I just added this photo to kind of wrap up my portion of the show. This is an adorable 3-toed sloth that just crawled into our backyard one day. She looks like she's smiling and waving to you, so I thought it'd be a nice send-off. Don't take it from me, take it from her. Come to Costa Rica and see all of the wildlife and natural beauty for yourself.
Wow. Well, Nikki, thank you so much. You had so many tips and places, tips of things to do, places to see, and I loved it. And a waving sloth at the end. So
yeah, that was very surprising. We were with my father-in-law at the time, and he just said, "There's a sloth up in the rafters." I'm like, "Of course, there's a sloth up in the rafters." Like, why wouldn't there be a sloth? Right? No big deal. Yeah.
Well, before we get into our questions, I'll just do a quick word from our sponsor. And tonight, our word from our sponsor is a Rick Steves product, and it is the Packable Duffel. It's on sale this week. It looks like this, and you just unzip it, it folds into itself, and then voila, you have a little duffel. And so if you're someone like me and you like to pick up souvenirs along the way or gifts for people back home, this is a great thing that you can just put on top of your bag and fill with things that you picked up along the way in your trip. And now some questions for you, Nikki. And we won't be able to get to all the questions tonight, but I think just after seeing how thorough your presentation is, I can only imagine how great the Moon Guidebook for Costa Rica is. So highly recommend getting that. I want to pick one up. Or maybe
Thank you.
Yes. One of the most common questions, one person who asked was Rebecca, and she was wondering, is public transportation good in Costa Rica, or should you plan on renting a car?
Yeah, so yes and yes, Rebecca. So addressing public transportation first. So yes, the public transit system is really well run. There's this weird thought that some people have that Costa Rica uses these old chicken buses to get around. That is just a myth. They use these large coach buses. Yeah, so I wouldn't be worried about using the public transport system at all. The thing to keep in mind with public transportation is that you often have connections. So even though it's the most affordable way of getting around Costa Rica, it often takes up a lot of your vacation time. So, I mean, if you're running on a really tight schedule, it might not be the best option. There is also the option, like you mentioned, to rent a vehicle. A lot of travelers do. I would even maybe go so far as to say that most travelers rent a car. But even if you are a little nervous for driving in Costa Rica, that's okay. There's a middle ground. So there are lots of shared shuttle services that you can use to get from point A to point B. There are also things called private transfer services. So that entails renting the whole bus and the driver to get from point A to point B. So that's a really good option if you're traveling with, a big family or a big friend group. And there's also something called city to city transportation inclusive tours. Now, that's a word, that's a mouthful. But but what those are adventure tours that include transportation between two destinations. So for instance, the Pequara River rafting tour that I covered, that tour, you can get picked up in La Fortuna, San Jose, Puerto Viejo de Talamanca on the Caribbean coast, or a host of many other destinations. And after you do the rafting tour, you can get dropped off at a different destination. So not only do you save yourself the cost of moving between destinations, but you also save yourself a lot of time because you're doing the adventure tour and the transportation in the same day.
Nice. A common question, where is the best place to fly in to San Jose, or is there another place that people often fly into?
Yeah, so there's two international airports in Costa Rica. The San Jose airport, which is actually about a 25-minute drive outside of San Jose, is the largest airport and it handles the majority of visitors. So that's definitely the most popular option. There is a second international airport that's located up in the northern Pacific corner, and it's called it's in a town called Liberia. It's called the Guanacaste Airport. Now, a lot of people will choose to fly into that airport if they are wanting to visit destinations on the northern Pacific coast or the Nicoya Peninsula because they happen to be up in that region of the country. So you can choose either one. I know a lot of people will fly into one, travel around the country, and then fly out of the other so they don't have like any switchbacks. So you can choose whichever one. Some have cheaper flights than others, so there are definitely two options for you.
Thank you. I could ask you questions all night because you know everything there is to know about Costa Rica. But we have time for just one more question this evening.
Okay.
And it's just kind of a more general question. You've spent a lot of time in Costa Rica now over the years, but what would you say is your favorite thing about the people of Costa Rica?
Oh man, there's so many. Okay, so the business part of it, like the entrepreneur in me, wants to say that I love how hardworking Costa Ricans are. So it is incredible the standard of work that they have, and I really appreciate working with them on a business level because they go above and beyond. They don't complain. They're just very hardworking, appreciative people. Now the traveler in me, or the other side of me, says that I love how much Costa Ricans love Costa Rica. So you see this a lot in sustainability initiatives. A lot of businesses and even just individuals are donating a lot of time and resources to trying to preserve the natural space. I should also mention that 25% of all of Costa Rica is protected land. So I love how much Costa Ricans appreciate what they have and how hard, I guess, they work to conserve it and protect it.
Wow. That just makes you want to help preserve it when you visit as well. That makes you want to respect their land as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Nikki, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I learned so much. I have been wanting to go to Costa Rica. Now I want to go even more.
Oh, good. Well, let me know. Maybe
All right.
we can coordinate or something.
Yes.
Awesome.
And before we wrap things up tonight, I wanted to remind you that we have a little destination duel quiz on Rick's social media right now. So the next destination duel, our viewers get to choose, and it will be either Berlin versus Munich or Prague versus Budapest. This is this kind of little mini battle we do, Nikki, for different cities or towns in Europe. So
That's tough. I don't know how you pick between those. That's tough.
We're letting our viewers decide for us. Yeah, because it is hard. Yeah.
Good call.
Yeah. And next week, Gabe Guidebook will be hosting the show, and it will be in Bruges and West Flanders in Belgium with Nico Fabriel. And so this is an area that's not as often covered. So I'm also excited to learn about this as we head back to Europe.
Awesome.
And thank you so much again, Nikki, for joining us. Have a good night.
Yeah, you too. Thanks, Julianne.
Night. Good night, everyone.